Good morning. This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. Now, as we go through life, life can be a maze, especially if we think we are born to be something that we're not. Or maybe we're born to be something that we don't want to be, and we want to make some changes. And I hope I don't mess up your name, but my guest today is it Ulrika?
That works
I
fine with
got
me.
it.
Yes.
Ulrika Sullivan. And I met Ulrika from podcast.com, as I mentioned on many of my shows. That's where my guests originally is how we met. And what I was impressed about with her bio, she talks about being a trained, educated scientist. And it sounds like you gave that up one day because you said, there's got to be more to this than all the books I've read and all the mathematical calculations I'm making. So tell us how you got to where you are today.
Oh, wow. How long time do we have? Thank you so much
Sure.
for the invitation to be here with you today. I am truly grateful to hopefully be inspiring others that are listening or watching this right now to that there is more for you as well. And yes, my story started out in Sweden. I'm originally from Sweden. I moved with my company over here to the US a little over 20 years ago now. And back then I was working in as a scientist. And if you imagine, it's like the definition of success sometimes, having a great stable job in a corporation, having all kinds of business travel and all, yeah, you name it, right? So imagine me as this woman that had it all on the outside, right? And the way we define success for many women in particular, it's following some sort of external expectation of what success means. But it came to a expense, and I wasn't really that aware of that. My career that I loved and had put my whole self identity into actually was not as well aligned with my natural energy as it could be. Because back then, the way many of us are going about our days is that we want to kind of be the good girl, right? We push through our day and suck it up, or the way that we're pushing ourselves to do things that makes us feel frustrated or drained or all of those things. And I wasn't really reflecting upon that back then. And but again, my life was like on the outside, really, I had it all: a young family, multitasking, good job, business travel, everything, right? And then my rock bottom happened. And it was, I'm giving you the short story here. Sure. And really what that was about was that the universe really was showing me a new direction. And the way that it actually, I got laid off from my work due to a restructuring. And that hit me so hard because I did not see it coming. And often, isn't it so in life that when we are due to change and make a choice and we're not seeing it, right? Because my autopilot was full on, right? So there was no kind of conscious choice at the moment there. But it hits where it matters the most to us individually. And in my case, it was my career. And for many others, it might hit other places, right? We all have had some rock bottoms in life that we consider our turning points. And this was really a turning point for me. And it gave me an opportunity to actually completely pivot into the unknown, as I call it, and find my so to say, my point of no return, which is that feeling of I cannot go back to my past life in the way I was approaching it in the past, or even, and for me, it meant to completely change my career
Sure.
and dive deep into what are my natural talents and gifts. And I had that opportunity since everything was just slowed down all of a sudden, with that break in a career and a chance to kind of look up a bit and expand, take off that tunnel vision or the blinders, if you will.
Well, what I'm hearing you say is something that so many of us have gone through. Um, you know, when we're graduating high school, we think of, oh, this is who I want to be, whether it's going to a trade school, whether it's going to college, whether it's, hey, I'm just going to do it from this point forward with everything that I know. And there's nothing wrong with those three ways of living your life. But when we live that life with, like you said, our blinders on, we are making the assumptions that, well, we must be happy doing what we're doing because we made this choice. And I know that's how I reacted much in my life, that, how could I go and tell, my husband that, this job that I have and the career that I thought I wanted isn't working for me. Um, because sometimes it's difficult to say it to a significant other that, hey, um, I need to stop this because I'm not fulfilled. And like you said, on the outside, I'm sure friends, family thought, look what she's doing. She's doing, as we would say, a job of a man. And, she's a woman and she's breaking that ceiling, but it wasn't satisfying for you. You were missing something.
I was
So,
missing something.
yeah.
Yes. I realized that after a long career.
And you may have, if they hadn't let you go, you probably would have gotten that sense at some point because, like you said, we get tired. We get tired of juggling. Um, you know, my son moved away at the beginning of the spring. He then moved home and he's going to be moving away again. And when he first moved out, it was like, oh, I can't handle this. This is horrible. Um, and then after about a week, it was like, well, it's not so horrible. Um, but I started changing while he was away for the 3 months he was away. And when he came back, I sort of started reverting backwards. And it was like, no, I can't do this. And so I had to have a sit down with him and his dad and say, look, I went through a change and I was better for it. So I'm going to continue down that path. And I was assuming there was going to be some backlash, but I think that's the problem with us women. We paint this picture of all these things that we can do. And then when we tell somebody either we don't want to do it or we can't do it anymore, they question us. So, how is that like for you and your family?
Yes. I have a very great husband in that sense, that we actually made a decision. Well, this was a little later on, but he knew that I was up for something big, right? In terms of a change. So he gave me a lot of space. And naturally, since I was kind of not doing much for a little bit of time, it was also a change for him, right? So it gave him opportunity to say, okay, what's this new opportunity? What is it that's going to present itself? And it turned out that I started my own business and I ran that in parallel with, because I got another job in the similar situation, but the difference to overlap with my business that I started. And the difference in my mind and in my environment was I knew that I was building something on my own as an entrepreneur in parallel. And I knew that additional job I easily got after was just a temporary kind of transition period. And that really changed the whole dynamic, and it was a new energy of hope. And yeah, so my family really supported this change, because I think my husband said one day, Ulrika, I can sense a new energy with you, or some sort of spark. And just his validation, that he could see that something had opened up in me, gave me also that validation. What if this is the right way to go, right? So in the beginning, when we're starting to awaken to our own power, it's almost like we don't believe it. But when somebody says, hey, Ulrika, there's something different about you. Hey, there's something that's different, right? Then we kind of, oh, yeah, there is something different. I can feel it, right? It's to come in contact with our own power that is so important. And especially for me, as an example, I was so detached from myself and my life force in the past, by having pushed through, put blinders on, all of those things, right? But as I started to awaken this life spark within me, it's like that became kind of the guide, really.
Okay.
And is still. That's how I know what something is right. And I think that's what we all have, that
Well,
spark
and
in
we
whatever
do.
situation we're going through.
We do, but I think sometimes we're so afraid to this feeling that we have in the pit of our stomach. We're afraid to think of it anything other than physical, because, wow, if this is something that I need to change, how is it going to affect me? How is it going to fit my relationships? Um, and I know I went through that 10 years ago when I left corporate America, even though I had the total support of my youngest son and my husband. Um, I actually got into a very deep depression because I couldn't see my worth. And um, it probably was maybe 2, 3 weeks into taking a leave that I got a message from my job that I had deserted my job rather than being on medical leave. And that gave me my voice. It was like, no, I didn't quit. And I'm not a quitter, but I don't think I can go back. And I started thinking about all the things that I was good at. And I finally took a piece of paper and started writing those things down. What do I need? What do I want? And hopes and dreams. And, to our listeners, it doesn't happen overnight, believe me. I mean, it wasn't quite that simple. But when I look back, if I hadn't done that, um, I probably would have fought to get my job back. And I probably would have gone back into the same rat race. And as I tell many people, it wasn't the actual job, it was the culture around me. And the culture was eating away at me to the point that I was numb. I was just going in, working lots of hours, thinking I had to prove myself. And when I finally left, I realized, you know what? I have proved myself. And the biggest proof was to be able to say, okay, I'm out. So I'm sure that sort of happened for you as well. Um, Maybe not as consciously, but when you started your new business, was it like 180 degrees difference from what you were doing before?
Completely. Yes. And the and you may wonder, like, how did I get into what I do now, which is all about using our intuition and coaching people to find that and trust it, and develop that sense. I mean, you're a scientist, like how can you flip-flop to the other extreme, right? Where so what happened was that I have internally accepted this point of no return, as I call it. I knew I couldn't go back because there was something new going on. And what happened, just by me allowing something new in, signs and synchronicities were starting to show up. And with this new openness, with the blinders off, I started to kind of really notice what come in front of me. So for example, I was in this, what was it, a Facebook group or whatever, it was in conversation, and someone asked about how, somebody give me some tips around a life coaching practice or whatever. And for some reason, I clicked the link and up came I got certified as a professional life coach. And this was fairly early in the process, but I felt so strongly. And of course, when something is divinely timing, we know, and I was completely open at that time to kind of, okay, curious, like what's next and all of that. And that's the energy that we have to be in to be able to learn, right? Or move on. It's that curiosity. So I came across this website, and 3 hours later, I was signed up, right? And that's what started to happen to me, which was a new way of being led, if you will, or guided, whatever you want to call it. But clearly, it was not me planning out every single step on what's next and all that, which we often do, planning our goals and steps to take. Here, it was, I'm curious about something new, show it to me. And so it did, right? So that happened a number of times. It led me to energy healing. It led me to astrology. It led me to, expand my intuitive gifts. And that's really what I do now for my business full time. And, it's such a difference. It's my life's work.
And what you're saying is that once we open up, we have so many more opportunities. And some of those opportunities we probably wouldn't have taken in the past, because in the past, at least for myself, I believed that I just had to be that good girl, good mother, good wife, good employee, on and on. And every time I took, a positive intelligence course, what would come up? I'm a pleaser, like 99.9% of my time. And that was a message I got growing up. Make somebody happy, please mom, please dad, be nice to your brothers, and so I was always doing for them, not realizing what it is that I wanted to do. And my husband complained about this on and off. He'd say, something as simple as going out to dinner. He said, okay, you said you wanted to go out to dinner, pick a place. And they'd go, oh, no, you pick the place. And he'd go, no, we're doing this for you. And then I would start to think, oh my gosh, he doesn't want to go out, wouldn't ask the question. I'd go in the kitchen, I'd make dinner. And then he'd say to me, why did you do that? And I said, well, you sounded like you didn't want to go to dinner. He said, no, all I asked was you make the decision because you asked to go out. And it has taken me a long time to actually be able to say, okay, I want to go here. And then if he says, not my favorite, then we can have a discussion about it. But at least I opened up. I felt what I had to feel, and not waiting for that reprimand about, oh, I don't want to go there. Hey, let's just eat at home. And that's what I've been expecting all my life. And when you make that change, you listen to the dialogue from yourself as well as from people around you.
Oh, you're bringing up such an important, and there's a lot in there, what you just said. And this ultimately, what I took from what you just said also is that we're so used to the conditioned patterns that we have been carrying with us so long. So it feels comfortable, even if it's not serving ourselves, right? And serving ourselves is somewhat, as a woman, sometimes in the past, is like, you're not supposed to put yourself first in your life. You're supposed to put others first in your life. And that's what's shifting as we realize that we our birthright is to put ourselves at the top of the mountain in our own life, as I usually say.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we have to sacrifice being there for others and serve others. We can have both. And I think that's a very important, it's about self-empowerment. Like you said, you probably have a favorite restaurant, but it's like now, but the same thing, right? It's like we need to be honoring others before our own needs, and that's not how we get fulfilled in life.
Exactly. You know, it goes back to what they say when you get on an airplane, when those oxygen masks fall down, put yours on first before you
Yeah.
help anybody else. And it's something that we have to really think about, because if I'm not feeling good about myself, I probably don't have a lot of energy for the other person. And
Right.
if they need me, I need to be able to be strong enough to help them. And, you know, when my mother got ill 6 years ago, um, I ran up to Michigan to be with her, and without even thinking, I mean, it was within the first couple of hours standing in our hospital room. Um, I called my husband, who had gone back to her place to take a nap, and I said, I'm going to stay with my mother as long as she needs me. And he goes, oh, yeah, we'll be here a couple of days. And I said, no. I said, you know, when she gets home, she's going to be bedridden. I'm going to go stay at her place. And he said, if that's what you need to do, you do it. And that was the beginning of my transformation. I wasn't doing it because my brother's family said, oh, Karen, your responsibility is to be with your mom. Your doctors told us she may have a day, she may have a year, she may have 2 years, but your mom's never going to be who she was. And I thought, I sort of know the things that would make her happy, but I will feel so good if I can do a fraction. And I never thought I could do the whole thing. And I never planned on it. It was if I could just do a fraction. I don't want to be sorry the day she passes away. And that's, I have built off of that, because yes, do I want to make other people happy? Of course, we all want to be that miracle worker with the magic wand. But I realized I don't have a magic wand. And just like I had to find it inside of me, everybody else does too.
Absolutely. And it is that inner balance, if you will, or inner peace about decisions that we're making now, instead of feeling that you're playing smaller or negotiating away yourself and your needs. I think that's the difference. At least that's how I feel, is very, very different energy within myself. The change is really within, and the perspective on how I interact with others. And I mean, we often still have the same family, the same house, and all of that, but the change is on the inside.
Right. Exactly. So when you decided to start this business and you took the classes, um, what did you think you really were going to do at the end of the certification? Because I've heard a lot of people have taken these certification classes, they become certified, and then they look at the piece of paper and they go, really? Is that what I want to do? Or, hey, I don't know how to do it. How do I get my first client,
Yeah.
to see if I can really do what I've been trained to do?
So I can only share my own experience
Sure,
with
sure.
this, and this is also what I hope for others that are deciding to go on a different path than they're familiar with. I continued to go deeper with myself, and what I mean with that is that I changed the way I make space for myself in my life. So I wasn't focusing on, oh, how do I get my next client or my first client? How do I get to pay the bills? No, I really gave myself a different space, like a different kind of space in my own life to really dive into the creativity and that passion I had for what I was doing. And I didn't know what direction this would go. I know I had a training because, as a as a scientist, you have to have your credentials, right? But that doesn't mean that we have to do it exactly as taught, right? So I have added skills and inspirations and kind of cooked my own soup in a way, and allow these new influences and new skills come in when they are supposed to. But what I have been focusing on in my business is really, what am I passionate about? What feels right? Where does my interest go? And let that lead. Because when we do that, and I've found that's when we start to manifest and attract the right clients, the ones that are ready, it's the abundance, in terms of, often we think about abundance and monetary, but other things like a quality of life, flexibility, happiness, joy, all of that starts to come when we are focusing on what we're inspired by, what we can't wait to get up and do in the morning, right?
Exactly.
So that has been the key for me, and even becoming an author and writing a book, that also was completely, I wasn't, if you asked me a number of years ago, like, Ulrika, you're going to write a book, you're going to have a successful business coach, like all of the things that I've gotten into now, I would not have said, like, are you crazy? I'm not going to do all of those things. But here I am, and I have a business and a life's work that I'm truly passionate about. And that is, and that has been attracting so much abundance to me. So that's at least have been the key for me.
Sure. And it's interesting because, I've told this story many times on Avoid the Maze, that I was about 9 or 10 years old. It was the summer evening. We were sitting on my parents' front porch, and I turned to my mom and I said, "See that house across the street near the corner?" And she goes, "Yeah." I said, "Someday I'm going to get married. I'm going to have kids. We're going to live there." She goes, "You are?" And I said, "Absolutely. And Friday nights we'll come to dinner here. And on Sunday morning, you'll come to brunch at my house." And she said, "Honey, that would be lovely." Now, my mother grew up and lived within a very short distance of her parents, her sisters, her brothers. Um, and that's how I just pictured my life. That's what it was going to be like. And at 20, I fell in love for the first time. And my husband was going away to dental school. So we chose, well, let's get married before that happens. And we did. And I moved out of my mother's house, out of the state, and never returned. And I remember her saying to me once, "What happened with that dream of yours?" And I said, "Well, you don't live in that house anyways anymore. So I wouldn't have been across the street from you." But I knew what she was saying. Like,
Yeah.
what happened to it? And I was actually going through a divorce at the time. And I said, "Mom, I don't know. I'm not the same person I was when I was 9. I'm not the same person I was at 21 when I got married. Um, I'm going through a change." And for her, that was very difficult because for 4 years, during my high school years, we all lived out of state, and my mother was miserable. She was away from her father, her sisters, all of her friends and family. And so when we moved back, all of a sudden, my mother transitioned into this very happy lady, the one that I remembered growing up. And I remember that evening when she said to me, "So what happened with your dreams?" And I said, "My dreams were at the pit of my stomach. and I haven't let them come out again. And it probably took me a good 20 years from that conversation to finally say, this is ridiculous. I had remarried. I have a wonderful husband that if I told him, you know, I'm going to go pack our bags and we're going to go to a deserted island, he'd say, okay. And it'd be like, seriously, how are we going to get there? He wouldn't care. Let's just go. So, to all of you listening out there, you can make changes, but it takes that passion to do them. And that's what I see when you're talking to me here. It's like you're just passionate about, hey, there may be something new that drops from the sky today.
Yes. And you know, in the past, I reflect upon, you know, me back then and me now. It's the difference is that I'm tuned in with myself, even what my body is telling me, right? The body consciousness knows so much more than sometimes what our mind, like our mind really is trying to bring us back to the comfort zone and stay where you are, right? But our body, once we connect with, for example, body consciousness, you know, right, what's right and what's wrong when the body tells a yes. So, but so many of us have gone so long from not being connected with our body or our intuition, what that inner knowing is telling us. It's so easy to just ignore it and put it over there because the mind, we have it all figured out. So yes, but once we start to open up and live in this curiosity, that energy of life force, curiosity, and possibility, something changes. And but it has to come from within, and I think that's also that we're used to maybe take advice from others, even our immediate family, or you know, go to external sources for answers. And I think for me, and sounds like for you too, is that once we start to listen and honor our truth, then we can stay in that state of listening, inner listening, and it takes a lot of courage to act on that inner knowing, because that's really the key at the end of the day. What do we do with that insight? Do we suppress it, or do we actually act on it in a small way or a big way or whatever is right for us?
Well, I've become friends with another coach. This show has been wonderful for me because I basically only interview coaches now, and I learned so much. As different as everybody is, there's a little piece from each of you that I can take and go, I can relate. Let me try it. If it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't fit, okay, I'll put it off to the side. But this coach has been through a lot of life's challenges. And right now, she's in a phenomenal place. In fact, for about a month, she and her husband and her 2-year-old son, they were traveling all over Europe. And she was embracing people on her journey. And I saw a lot of comments from some people that would say, well, if that's the way you do it, it will never happen for me because I don't have the money to go to Europe or whatever. And I posted one day and I said, you don't have to go to Europe. She happens to be there. It happens to work for her. But you could probably walk outside and look at a tree and feel the same way she's feeling in the Mediterranean. So it's not what she's doing, where she is in doing it. It's what she's doing. She's breathing it in. She's tasting it and going, this works. And as I've been following her very closely, I've been doing the same thing. Even if I'm only going outside for 2 minutes to go get the mail, I'm looking at the sky. I'm looking at the grass. I'm looking at the trees. And this works for me. And if it doesn't work for me, okay. Today's not the day for me to appreciate nature, and that's okay. So, how do you approach it with a client who comes to you and may say, "Oh, you're so lucky we're allowed to leave your," and I've heard it said, "You were allowed by your family to leave your job, um, and now you're, you know, creating something, but don't you think that's unfair to your family? Or how am I supposed to do it if I don't have the support from my family?"
Mm, yeah, it's always this conundrum, right? When we see someone have what we want, but we don't think we can get it. We have to start asking ourselves questions, and that's how I approach it with my clients too. They come to me for a reason, right? So they are ready. Their subconscious, their higher self knows that they are ready to make a shift, but sometimes they're very challenged. Like, can I do that? Like with the self-doubt and the patterns that we conditioned in or being given by our past. But the success is in scaling it down so that it doesn't feel like a mountain. Whatever it is that we want and can express, that can be done, can be achieved. It's just that sometimes we try to take a too big of a leap and then we're stuck in the comfort zone again, right?
Right.
So what's the key here is there is no recipe for all. The recipe we all carry for what we are meant to do or experience or become is within us. And I'm professionally trained to help a person navigate and discover that. So that's my job, right? As a coach, to help my client to navigate their own path and stretch them to beyond what they think is possible.
Absolutely.
So that's it's you have to be in front of me as a coach to experience that. You cannot go buy a book, or you cannot go buy a course, or listen to a leader or a guru or whatever. You cannot take that as a face value. You can get inspired by it. You can ignite your spark with people's wisdom, but your own wisdom you have to discover yourself. And I think that's the work, that's the inner process that we have to go through. And anyone who says, well, you're over there in the Mediterranean, or and that maybe that's not working for me, or what, anytime we come up with those types of mind games, if you will, there is something within us that tells us that either I got hurt when I tried to get something one day or in the past, or somebody told me that I couldn't, and I believed them. So it's to find that, it's a lot of courage to kind of challenge what we're telling ourselves on the inside. Because
Absolutely.
once we started to know and be aware, and that happened for me too, like I had no idea that I was telling myself all these things, right? That held me back or kept me in a career that wasn't 100% fulfilling. But once we start to listen to that inner conversation and kind of, what is it really that I'm telling myself? And is that helping me? Is that serving me? And when we say, oh, no, I can't believe I'm telling myself this on a daily basis. So this self-awareness is critical. And that's part of what we do in the coaching as well, to help become self-aware of what's kind of going on the inside. And also to help set boundaries of, like, if let's say your best friend is who gives you advice. I've done it for 20 years. I know, like, if that's the person, and if we can observe that conversation and say, is it really healthy for me? Because many of us are having friends and ways of dialoguing that feels comfortable, but maybe it's not supportive.
Absolutely. And I think many of us have been through that. you know, we believe because this person is our best friend, our parent, our sister. Um, we go to them, we ask them the questions, and they give us answers, but they're giving us their answers. And
Right.
I lived by that for a very long time. I have two older brothers, and the middle brother, um, my parents always saw all of his talents, all of his goodness. And I have to tell you, I love him to death. As a kid, I think I was jealous. Um, but getting to know him as an adult really has been the icing on the cake. However, I would go to him and I would ask him certain questions, and he has a totally different lifestyle. He's a music producer. He's been in Hollywood. He's been in New York. He's lived a totally different life than I have. And we can have great conversations. But when I ask him for advice on something that's happening to me, I started to realize he's out of touch because he doesn't understand what I'm going through here. And so, not that I haven't gone back to him since then, but I've realized that it's good to hear what he has to say because I can filter through it. And if it's not right for me, all right. But getting to know his viewpoint has really been very helpful because there now are certain things that I certainly would not take to him because he just wouldn't be able to hit my inner core. And
Mm.
so I think we have to be careful when we're depending on people for advice, um, because that's not what coaching does. Coaching guides us. We're giving ourself advice, and you're pulling
Yes.
it out of us in all the conversations. And I will tell you, I'm working with 4 different coaches right now, and I never compare, but I know what each one's value is for me.
Mm.
And um, that's why I've been doing advocating for coaches because I think we have millions of people out there who need to find somebody to help guide them so that at the end of their day, they can say, I did it. And that can be anything that they did.
Yeah. Beautiful. So beautiful. Yes. And it comes to that point when we are feeling that, okay, I'm willing to change what's not serving me. And once we are there, it's that opening of, okay,
Yeah,
anything is possible, right?
you are right. So, how can our listeners find you, follow you, maybe decide that you're the coach for them?
And yes, if you resonate with this conversation today, visit me on ulrikasullivan.com. And you can also go around there. You find my services there. You find my book, Wisdom Beyond What You Know. And you can also sign up for, I have a little 7-step guide to listen to your intuition. So it's a little PDF with some tips from me that have worked for me and that I also teach in my book. So welcome to visit me there.
I think that's wonderful. And for those of you listening, everything will be in the show notes. So there's no excuse when you say, you know, there was this person on your show and I wanted to contact her and I had no idea how. Well, guess what? If you look in the show notes, you'll absolutely know how. Um, I want to thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. And part of my life's passion is if we can just touch one person one day at a time, um, we are making our own lives much better. So thank you again. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye now.
Bye.